Hi students, how are you? So in the previous lecture we have started the chapter number 11, that is what we call dual nature of matter and radiation. So in that chapter we have studied about the basic terminology, then we studied about the photoelectric effect, its experimental arrangement, observations, and then laws of photoelectric emission. So first of all, let's recapitulate the laws of photoelectric emission. So we people have studied about these laws of photoelectric emission, in which the first law of photoelectric emission was that photoelectric emission takes place only when the frequency of the incident radiation is greater than the characteristic frequency of the metal, what we call threshold frequency. So here, this type of graph we have obtained in the stopping potential and in between frequency. So this point is corresponding to the threshold frequency. We have called this as threshold frequency. Now what we call this, how we can define this threshold frequency, that is the minimum frequency of the incident radiation below which, at which the, what we can say, the metal shows the photoelectric effect. And what is photoelectric effect? We have already studied about it, that whenever the light radiation having the suitable high frequency falls on the metal surface, then the electrons are ejected from its surface. So that is what we call a photoelectric effect. Phenomena of ejection of electron from the metal surface when the light of suitable high frequencies made incident on this. Now, already I have told you that we have the metals like zinc, cadmium, magnesium. Whenever the incident radiation are falling on these metals like zinc, cadmium or magnesium, then the incident radiation required for producing this photoelectric effect are ultraviolet radiation, and in case of alkali metals like lithium, sodium, potassium, rubidium, cesium, for all these metals the incident radiations required are what we call visible radiation. So in this way we have studied about this basic phenomenon for photoelectric effect, and the first law of this effect was that photoelectric emission will take place only when the frequency of incident radiation is greater than the characteristic of the metal, that is called as threshold frequency. The second law we have stated that on the observation made that photoelectric effect is the instantaneous phenomena. Instantaneous phenomena, that is the time lag between the incident radiation and emission of electron is less than 10⁻⁹ seconds. Third law regarding this law of photoelectric emission was, that is the kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectrons. Kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron depends upon the frequency of the incident radiation and is independent of the intensity. And we have explained it also with the help of graph. The graph was plotted between the photoelectric current and the collector potential. Here the collector plate potential was there, and here the retarding potential, we have explained it as retarding potential. What is retarding potential? That is the value of the collector potential at which no photoelectric current in the circuit flows, or at which the photoelectric current in the circuit becomes zero. So kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron only depends upon the frequency. So here we have made incident on the metal surface the radiation of different intensity. If the radiation is of intensity I1, then the stopping potential required is, let us consider, V0, and here the frequency of the radiation is kept constant. Okay, now if we increase the intensity of radiation whose frequency is kept constant, again we require the same value of the stopping potential. Now if we further increase the value of this stopping what we can say intensity of incident radiation, we again requires the same value of the stopping potential in order to make the current in the circuit zero. So this was the third law. The conclusion drawn was that kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectrons is proportional or directly proportional to, or we can say depends upon the frequency of the incident radiation and is independent of the intensity. Now, on the same way, we have defined the fourth law, that is, we have explained on the similar way that by plotting the graph between the photoelectric current, and this was called as collector plate potential, and here the retarding potential. So here we people have kept the intensity constant. Intensity of the light is kept constant. Intensity was kept constant, and we have taken the radiations of different frequencies. So whenever they fall on the metal surface, as the frequency are different, so different values of the stopping potential are required. In this way. So these were the different radiations having the frequency nu3, nu2, nu1, and here the frequency nu3 was greater than nu2 and nu2 was greater than nu1, but intensity was kept constant, and here this value of the current we call it as saturation current. Okay, so what we conclude from this graph, that number of photoelectrons emitted from the metal surface only depends upon the intensity and are independent of the frequency of incident radiation. So in this way we have studied about the laws of photoelectric emission. Now today we people are going to study about the failure of wave theory, or simply photoelectric effect and wave theory of light, which was given by the Christian Huygens. So let's study about the failure of wave theory of light. Sometimes this question asked in the annual exam carrying 3 marks. So how we can explain about this failure of wave theory of light? Wave theory of light. So here, in order to explain this theory was put forward by Christian Huygens. Scientist has put forward this theory. Put forward this theory. So, how this theory was unable to explain the laws of photoelectric emission, let us study about that. So here, in the first step, what could happen whenever according to wave model of light given by the Huygens, whenever the radiation falls on the metal surface, radiation of suitable high frequency falls on the metal surface, then what would happen? What would happen? The energy of these radiations, it gets spread. It spreads all over the surface of the metal like that, as a result of which each electron which is present in the metal gets very lesser amount of energy, as a result of which it finds difficult to overcome the work function of the metal, and that's why what would happen now, as a result of which each electron is getting very lesser share of energy, and it is unable to eject from the metal surface, or in order to overcome the work function of the metal, it has very lesser amount of energy. Now, what would happen? It may take 1 hour, it may take 1 day, it may take 1 year to come out the metal surface. The electron may come out from the metal surface, and it may take what we can say 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, or 1 year. So here the conclusion drawn was that photoelectric effect is not the instantaneous process, as just like we have stated. So first, in this way, the wave theory of light was unable to explain that why the photoelectric phenomena is instantaneous process. Again I am saying, failure of wave theory of light. This theory of light was put forward by Christian Huygens. Okay, so according to wave picture or wave model of light, whenever the light radiations pass on the metal surface, this is the metal surface. So what would happen? Whenever the radiations pass on the metal surface, then these radiations are spread over the whole surface of metal, and each electron of the metal gets the very lesser amount of share of this energy, as a result of which it finds it difficult to overcome the work function of the metal, that is what we call phi naught. So it may take 1 hour, 1 week, 1 month to overcome this work function, or we can say in order to in order to show the photoelectric effect. So that's why the wave theory of light is unable to explain, or fails to explain, that why the photoelectric emission is the instantaneous phenomena. In the second case, according to wave picture of light, whatever the intensity of the incident radiation is, whatever the frequency of the incident radiation is, whatever the frequency of the incident radiation is, even the less energetic beam of radiation is capable of showing the photoelectric effect. Once again repeating, according to wave model of light, whatever the frequency of the incident radiation is, even the lesser energetic radiation is able to show the photoelectric effect. Okay, so here in this way, even the less energetic beam is able to show this photoelectric effect, or we can say that wave theory of light contradict the statement that in photoelectric emission, what we can say that while the kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron is not depending upon the frequency. Here once again I am repeating, whatever be the frequency of the incident radiation is, whatever the frequency of the incident radiation is, it is able to show it is capable to show the photoelectric effect when it falls on the metal surface. Or we can say According to Bay model of light, the frequency of incident radiation is proportional to the number of photoelectrons emitted from the metal surface. So, which contradicts the statement that the law that kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron is independent of what we can say. Sorry, number of photoelectron emitted from the metal surface is independent of what we can say this frequency. Sorry, here in this case, he is actually in Bayes theory of light, he wants to say that there does not exist any concept of threshold frequency. Even the less energetic beam, whatever the frequency of incident radiation is, it is capable to show this photoelectric effect. So main conclusion drawn from this point is that there does not exist any threshold frequency, okay, because whatever the frequency of incident radiation is, according to Bayes picture of light, it is capable of showing the photoelectric effect, and which contradicts the statement that this first law, that in order to show the photoelectric emission, there exists the characteristic frequency of the metal called as threshold frequency. So here in this way we can explain about this second what we can say, second thing which was given by this Bayes picture of light. Once again repeating, according to Bayes model of light, whatever the frequency of the incident radiation is, it is capable of showing the photoelectric effect provided it falls on the metal surface for the fairly long time. So we can say that main conclusion is that there does not exist any threshold frequency, and which contradicts the first law of photoelectric emission, that there for every metal there exists the characteristic frequency, what we call threshold frequency, below which no photoelectric emission cannot take place. Now let's come to the third point of Bayes theory of light. According to this third point given by the Bayes model of light, it says that whenever the intensity of the light, greater is the intensity of the incident light, what would happen? Greater will be the energy possessed by the electron, as a result of which it will get emitted from the metal surface with greater kinetic energy. This electron will get emitted with greater kinetic energy. So what does it mean? According to Bayes model of light, intensity of the incident radiation is proportional to the kinetic energy, and which is the contradiction of law of photoelectric emission, because kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron is depending upon or it is proportional to the frequency of incident radiation. So here the third point, once again repeating, whenever the greater is the intensity of the incident radiation falling on the metal surface, greater is the energy gained by the electron, as a result of which it will get ejected from the metal surface with the greater kinetic energy. What does it mean? It means that kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron depends upon the intensity of incident radiation. Why? Because intensity is proportional to the number of photons falling on the area per unit area per unit time. So that's why greater is the intensity of the incident radiation, greater will be the number of photons falling per unit area per unit time. As a result of which greater number of photons will get what we can say ejected with the greater kinetic energy, and hence in this way this was also the contradiction of law of photoelectric emission, because in law of photoelectric emission we have studied that kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron depends upon the frequency of the incident radiation and is independent of the intensity. So hence, on the basis of these 3 points, we can say that the wave theory of light was unable to explain the laws of photoelectric emission. So in this way, the wave theory fails. Once again I am repeating, look at here. This theory, wave theory of light, was put forward by Christian Huygens. So according to this wave picture of light, the first point introduced was that it was just a contradiction of the law of photoelectric emission, which says that photoelectric emission is the instantaneous process. According to wave picture of light, when a light of suitable high frequency falls on the metal surface having the energy h nu, then this energy of the radiation gets shared by the, or what we can say, this radiation spread over the whole surface of metal, and this energy is shared by the electrons which are present on the metal surface, as a result of which each electron gets very lesser amount of energy, okay, as its share, and finds difficult to overcome the work function. So wave theory of light says that it may take 1 hour, 1 week, 1 month or 1 year to overcome this work function. So that's why it may not be the instantaneous process. In the second point, according to wave theory of light, whenever there does not exist any threshold frequency, because whatever the frequency of incident radiation is, it is capable to show the photoelectrical effect, and which was the contradiction of law of photoelectric emission, that there exists a threshold frequency below which no photoelectric emission can take place. But here wave theory is telling that even whatever the frequency of incident radiation is, it is capable to show the photoelectric effect. So in this way, second point also contradicts the law of photoelectric emission. In the third point, the wave theory states that kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron depends upon the intensity of incident radiation. Because greater is the intensity of the incident radiation, greater is the energy with energy possessed by the electron, or the electron which is present on the metal surface will get the greater kinetic energy, as a result of which it finds easy to eject out with the greater kinetic energy. So intensity is found to be, or kinetic energy is found to be proportional to intensity, because intensity is proportional to the number of photons hitting the per unit area per unit time. So if the intensity of the incident radiation is greater, so the photoelectrons ejected from the metal surface will possess the greater kinetic energy, and it was a contradiction of the law of photoelectric emission, that states that kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron depends upon the frequency of incidental radiation. So in this way, this theory fails to explain the laws of photoelectric emission. Now let's study about the particle nature of radiation. The next thing is particle nature of radiation. Let's study about this particle nature of radiation. as the Christian Huygens Wave theory does not give the satisfactory explanation about the laws of photoelectric emission, so then Einstein turned towards the particle nature of radiation. He explained that, in his theory explained that light propagates in the form of small packets of energy. Once again repeating. Light propagates in the form of small packets of energy, and these small packets of energy, also called as bundle of energy, are called as, or simply called as, quanta of energy, and it travels in the form of these small packets of energy, or simply quanta of energy, or bundle of energy, and it travels in the form of particle, and that particle is called as a photon. So, what are the characteristics of the particle nature of radiation? Let's study about it. So, this particle nature of radiation was introduced by the scientist, what we say, Einstein. Because why he has introduced this concept of particle nature of radiation? Because the Wave theory of light introduced by the Christian Huygens does not satisfactorily explains the laws of photoelectric emission. So that's why he introduced this particle nature of radiation by explaining that light propagates in the form of in the form of small packets of energy, small packets of energy, and these small packets of energy, they are called as, or bundles of energy are called as photons, okay. So now we people are going to study about the characteristics of this particle nature of light. Let's study about this. What are the characteristics of photon? So, what are the characteristics? Characteristics of particle nature of light or radiation. The first characteristic is, whenever these, what we can say, in interaction with the matter, the radiation behaves like particles. Whenever the radiations are falling or getting interacted with the matter, here in this case we see, if radiations are getting interaction with the matter, then they behave like a particle, and that particle is called as a photon, that small packet of energy. So I can say here, during interaction with matter, or during interaction with matter, radiations behave like particles. During their interaction with matter, radiations behaves like particles called photons. In interaction with the matter, radiations behave like particles called photons. Now, what about the characteristic of this photon? So we can say photon has zero rest mass. Photons have zero rest mass. Okay. Further, they are electrically neutral. Photons are electrically neutral. So due to which they are not deflected by the electric and magnetic field. So they are not deflected by deflected by electric or magnetic field. Electric and magnetic fields. Magnetic fields. Okay. The fourth point, we can say that these photons travels with the speed of light. Photons travels with the speed of light. Travels with the speed of light. Speed of light. That is 3 to 10 power 8 meter per second. Or what we can say, photons, their energy according to Einstein mass energy equivalence relation, how we can give, what about their momentum? So energy of the photons according to Einstein's theory of relativity. Einstein's theory of relativity or relativistic formulas given by Einstein. Energy is given by square root of P square C square plus this m naught square C raised power 4. This is the formula for the energy, where this m naught is called as the rest mass, where this m is equals to m naught over square root of 1 minus v square by c square. Now since here in this case what we have, the photon is traveling with the speed of light, so what we get, c square and c square will get cancelled out, as a result of which we get 1 minus 1 will become 0, so which implies m naught is equals to 0. So here we can write that, and if the rest mass is 0, so here E will be equals to square root of P square C square, and that is nothing but E is equals to Pc. Why? Because the rest mass is found to be 0. Here if we multiply, if we want to find out m naught, then m naught will be equal to m multiplied square root of 1 minus b square by c square. Putting the value b is equal to c, we get m naught is equal to 0. So energy of this photon is given by in terms of Pc. Okay. So in the next step, what about the momentum? So here we can write the momentum as momentum of the photon is given by P is equals to h by lambda. In the sixth point, the momentum of the photon is given by P is equals to h by lambda, and here we can also say that if P is equals to h by lambda, then as the energy of the incident radiation is h nu. Okay, so by writing this, how we can write this formula for P is equals to h by lambda? Is given by P is equals to h by lambda. But how this formula came? So here we can write, as we know that E is equals to Pc, but energy of the incident radiation is given by h nu. So h nu is equals to Pc. Now what about this frequency? Here we can write it as this is equals to c by lambda. Okay, so putting here the value, what we get at c by lambda is equals to Pc. C and C will get cancelled out, which implies this P is equals to h by lambda. So in this way we can write the formula for the momentum of the photon, that is given by h by lambda. Okay, because here energy formula can be expressed in various forms. Here we can also write it as or E is equals to hc by lambda, h nu. Okay, but according to Einstein's relativistic formula, this energy formula will be like that. or we can also write here, that is E is equals to h nu or hc by lambda, and this is equals to Pc. Mind that if we want to write this energy in photons, energy is always measured in electron volt, and the energy, if we want to write energy in electron volt, is given by, after putting the value, so 12,400 over lambda in angstrom. So in this way we can measure this energy in electron volt. Okay, and if we want to find, then hc over E lambda will be there, the required formula to calculate this energy. After substituting the respective values, we got this approximate 12,400 over lambda, and wavelength should be in angstrom. Okay, now let's move to the next point. That is, all the photons of particular frequency, they possesses the same energy irrespective of their intensity. Once again, all the photons of particular frequency or wavelength possesses the same energy irrespective of their intensity. So in the 7th point, we can say that all the photons of particular frequency, or what we can say, or wavelength, in brackets we can write, or wavelength possesses the same energy irrespective of their intensity, irrespective of their intensity. Okay, so in this way we can explain this. Now what about the next point? Increase in the intensity. Now suppose if we increase the intensity of the incident radiation, as we know that intensity is proportional to the number of photons per unit area per unit time. So increase in the intensity of incident radiation implies that number of photons incident per unit area per unit time will also increase. So in the next step we can write, that is, increase in intensity of the radiation. Intensity of radiation implies that number of photons falling per unit area, number of photons per unit area per unit time also increases. Per unit time increases. The next point we can write, that is, during the, or what we can say, whenever the photons collide with the material particles, during the collision with the material particles, what would happen? The momentum as well as energy of the photons remains conserved. So here we can write, during the collision with matter or with particles, during the collision with the particles, the energy and momentum of the photons remains conserved. Okay, so here in this way, these are the characteristics of the particle nature of radiation. which was introduced by the scientist Einstein, because wave theory put forward by the Christian Huygens does not give the satisfactory explanation of laws of photoelectric emission. So what was the characteristic of this? In interaction with the matter, radiations behave like particles called photons. Photons have zero rest mass, that is m naught is equals to 0. Photons are electrically neutral, as a result of which they are not deflected by the electric and magnetic fields. Photons travels with the speed of light, that is c is equals to 3 to 10 power 8 meter per second. That will be the speed. According to Einstein's relativistic formula, the energy of the particle moving with the speed of light is given by this. These are the relativistic energy formula, and this is what we call relativistic mass formula. Okay, so mass of the particle moving with the speed of light varies in accordance with this formula. This is in accordance with the Einstein theory of relativity. The derivation is beyond the scope, so we are writing like that. So here, if we put the value of this m naught as rest mass is 0, so we got E is equal to Pc. Further, if the energy of the incident radiation is h nu, then it can be written as hc by lambda, and it will be equal to Pc. And if, as we know that energy of the photon, it is measured in electron volt. So in order to write it in electron volt, we generally write this formula as hc by E into lambda. So when we put the value of this Planck constant 6.6 into 10 to the minus 34 joule second, c 3 to 10 power 8 meter per second value of this electron, and convert this wavelength in angstrom. So we got the formula 12,400 over lambda angstrom in this way. In the next characteristic, we have written momentum of the photon is given by P is equals to h by lambda, or simply, or we can write P is equals to, according to that formula, that is E by C. How this formula came? We have derived this as E is equals to Pc, but energy of the incident radiation is h nu, so h nu is equals to Pc, but nu is equal to C by lambda, so C and C on both sides will get cancelled out, and we got the required formula, that is P is equal to h by lambda. In the next characteristic, all the photons of particular frequency or wavelength possesses the same energy irrespective of their intensity. Whatever the intensity of incident radiation is, they will carry the same energy provided their frequency is the same. After that, in the next characteristic, we studied about that increased intensity of incident radiation implies that number of photons per unit area per unit time increases. In the last characteristic, we stated that during the collision with the particles, the energy and momentum of the photons, it remains conserved. So in this way, the particle nature of radiation was introduced by the Einstein. Now, let's study about the next topic, that is Einstein photoelectric equation, and how Einstein was able to explain about the laws of photoelectric emission by introducing this concept. So we people are going to study now about the Einstein's photoelectric equation. So what was the Einstein photoelectric equation? Let's study about it. Let's study about this Einstein's photoelectric equation. Einstein's photoelectric equation. Einstein derives the photoelectric equation, and according to Einstein, what would happen? Suppose this is our metal surface. Let us consider here the metal is zinc, then the incident radiation which will show the photoelectric effect we have to take as ultraviolet radiation. So what would happen? Let us consider this radiation have the energy h nu, and whenever it falls on the metal surface whose work function is denoted by this phi naught. So whenever this radiation falls on the metal surface, then its energy is utilized by the electron in two ways. Some part of this energy is utilized by the electron in order to overcome this work function. What is work function? We have already defined it. That is minimum energy required to eject the electron from the metal surface with zero velocity. Means to say that electron does not possess any kinetic energy. So here the energy of this incident radiation is utilized by the electron in two ways. Some part of this energy is utilized by the electron in order to overcome this work function, and the rest part of this energy is utilized by the electron to get the maximum kinetic energy. So according to Einstein, the energy of the incident radiation is utilized by the electron in two ways. That is, some part of this energy utilized by the electron to overcome the work function, and rest part of the energy of the incident radiation is utilized by the electron to get the maximum kinetic energy. So here, according to Einstein photoelectric equation, or simply we can say here, according to Einstein, what we have, the maximum, simply h nu is equals to 1 by 2 mv max square plus this work function. Whenever the radiation of having the certain energy falls on the metal surface, some amount of this energy of the incident radiation is utilized by the electron to overcome the work function, and the rest part of the energy is utilized by the electron to gain the kinetic energy. So here we can write by rearranging this equation that 1 by 2 mv max square will be equals to h nu minus phi naught. What is phi naught? This is the work function. Or we can write this equation as 1 by 2 mv max square is equals to h nu minus h nu naught. Why? Because here the work function is equals to h nu naught. Okay, so this is the form of Einstein's photoelectric equation. In this way, Einstein has given this, what we can say, is photoelectric equation, and on the basis of this photoelectric equation, the laws of photoelectric emission were explained. How he has explained the laws of photoelectric emission on the basis of this equation? Let's study about this. This question is asked so many times by the CBSE carrying 3 marks. Write the Einstein photoelectric equation and explain the laws of photoelectric emission on the basis of this equation. Okay, so let's study about that. How this photoelectric equation explains the laws of photoelectric emission. So explanation of laws of photoelectric emission. So how we can explain the laws of photoelectric emission? So here the first step, according to Einstein Einstein photoelectric emission, the kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron should be positive, because photoelectric emission takes place only and only when the frequency of incident radiation is greater than the characteristic frequency of that metal called threshold frequency. So here we can say, as the photoelectric emission will take place only when the kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron is greater than 1 or is positive. We can say photoelectric emission, according to Einstein, photoelectric emission takes place when this maximum kinetic energy 1 by 2 mv max square is positive, and for kinetic energy to be positive, h nu minus h nu naught should be greater than 0, and for this what should happen? For this, h nu must be greater than h nu naught, or we can say that nu must be greater than nu naught. So in this way, Einstein explained the first law of photoelectric emission, that is for photoelectric emission to take place, the frequency of the incident radiation must be greater than the characteristic frequency of the metal, which is called as threshold frequency of that metal. Okay, so in this way the first law was explained. Now, in the second case, that is, second law was explained like that, as in the Einstein photoelectric equation, the kinetic energy is linearly proportional to the frequency of the, what we can say, difference in frequency of incident radiation and threshold frequency. So we can say that as kinetic energy is linearly proportional to the frequency, and there is no term in the Einstein photoelectric equation representing the intensity of the incident radiation. So on the basis of this, we can say that kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron A depends upon the frequency of the incident radiation and is independent of intensity. Okay, so here second law was explained in like that, as in the Einstein's photoelectric equation, the kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron is kinetic energy of emitted photoelectrons is linearly proportional to the frequency, and there is no term in the equation representing the intensity. So on the basis of this, therefore Einstein proved this law. So therefore we can say that kinetic energy of emitted photoelectrons depends upon the frequency and is independent of frequency of the incident radiation and is independent of intensity. Okay, in this way he has explained this law. And for explaining the third law, according to Einstein, the basic phenomena involved in the photoelectric emission is one photon, one electron phenomenon. According to Einstein, the basic phenomenon involved in photoelectric emission is one photon and one electron, phenomena. What does it indicate? It indicates that whenever the one photon falls on the metal surface, at the same time one electron is ejected from the metal surface, provided the frequency of incident radiation is greater than the threshold frequency. Now, as we know that intensity of the radiation is proportional to the number of photons falling per unit area per unit time. So if greater is the intensity of the incident radiation, greater will be the number of photons, as a result of which greater will be the number of electrons ejected from the metal surface. So what we conclude from here, which implies that intensity, or what we can say, number of photons, number of electrons ejected from the metal surface are proportional to the intensity of incident radiation and is independent of frequency. So in this way, the third law was explained. Once again repeating, according to Einstein, the basic phenomena involved in photoelectric emission is one photon and one electron phenomena. Which means that when one photon is incident on the metal surface, at the same time one electron is ejected from the metal surface, provided the frequency of incident radiation should be greater than the threshold frequency. Now, if the intensity of incident radiation, if we increase the intensity of incident radiation, and as we know that intensity is proportional to the number of photons falling per unit area per unit time, then larger number of photons will fall on the metal surface, as a result of which larger number of electrons will get ejected, which implies that intensity, greater will be the intensity, greater will be the number of photons ejected from metal surface. Hence, it verifies the law of photoelectric emission, which states that number of photoelectrons ejected from the metal surface depends upon the intensity of incident radiation and are independent of frequency. So in this way we verify this third law. Now what about the fourth law? According to Einstein, the basic process involved, or the basic phenomena involved in photoelectric emission is the absorption of photon and emission of an electron. So what would happen? According to Einstein, the basic phenomena involved in photoelectric emission is the absorption of photon and emission of an electron at the same time. That is, we can say that at the same time when the photon is made incident on the metal surface, at the same time an electron gets ejected. So it verifies the law of photoelectric emission that photoelectric effect is the instantaneous phenomena, or photoelectric emission is instantaneous phenomena. So in this way, Einstein photoelectric equation verifies the laws of photoelectric emission. Once again repeating, according to Einstein, whenever a radiation having some energy falls on the metal surface, then when a photon, what we can say, the energy of the radiation is utilized by the electron in two ways. That is, some part of this energy is utilized in order to overcome this work function, okay, and rest part of energy is utilized by the photons to get the maximum kinetic energy. That is, energy, this is the total energy of incident radiation and is equal to the sum of the work function of the metal and the kinetic energy. So from here we got the maximum kinetic energy is equals to h nu minus this h nu naught, where nu naught is the threshold frequency. Now how he has explained the laws of photoelectric emission? In the first case, according to Einstein, photoelectric emission will take place when the kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectrons is positive, and the kinetic energy will be positive if h nu is greater than h nu naught, or nu must be greater than nu naught, which implies that for photoelectric emission or to take place, the frequency of incident radiation should be greater than threshold of frequency, which verifies the first law of photoelectric emission. Now, in the second case, according to Einstein, the kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron is linearly proportional to the frequency, and there is no term in the Einstein photoelectric equation representing the intensity. So it verifies the laws of photoelectric emission that kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectrons depends upon the frequency and is independent of the intensity of the incident radiation. So in the third step, according to Einstein, the basic phenomena involved in the photoelectric emission is one photon and one electron. Very important. That is, whenever the one photon is made incident on the metal surface, at the same time one electron is ejected from the metal surface. Now, as we know that greater is the intensity of the incident radiation. Now, intensity is proportional to the number of photons falling per unit area per unit time on the metal surface. So, if greater is the intensity of incident radiation, it will possess the greater number of photons. As a result of this phenomena, greater number of electrons will get ejected from the metal surface. Now, hence in this way it verifies the law of photoelectric emission, that is the number of photoelectrons ejected from the metal surface depends upon the intensity and is independent of frequency. In the fourth point, he says that according to Einstein, the basic phenomena involved in the photoelectric emission is the absorption of photon and emission of an electron at the same time. That is, it verifies the law of photoelectric emission, which says that photoelectric emission is the instantaneous process. So in this way, the Einstein photoelectric equation was introduced, and then laws of photoelectric emission was explained on the basis of this law. So in this way, it verifies the particle nature of the radiation. Now, what could happen during the year of 1912? Another scientist, R.A. Millikan, instead of disproving he wants to disprove the Einstein photoelectric equation. But instead of disproving this Einstein photoelectric equation, he rather checked the correctness of this equation. How he checked the correctness of the relation? Let's study about this. That is verification of Einstein photoelectric equation. So let's study about this verification of Einstein's photoelectric equation. Einstein's photoelectric equation. How this equation was verified? So in the year of 1912, a scientist, what we call R.A. Millikan, instead of disproving this Einstein photoelectric equation, he rather checked the correctness of Einstein photoelectric equation. How he has checked this Einstein photoelectric equation? By plotting the graph between the stopping potential and frequency. So let's study about this, how he has checked the correctness of the relation. He checked the correctness of Einstein's photoelectric equation. Einstein's photoelectric equation. So how he has checked this? Also, as we know that according to Einstein's photoelectric equation, we have maximum kinetic energy of the emitted photoelectron 1/2 V max square is equals to h nu minus h nu naught. Okay, so here it says that according to the observation of the Hurwitz and Lennard experiment, which was conducted to study the law of photoelectric emission, in the previous lecture we have studied. So there we found that but kinetic energy, this 1/2 mv max square, it is equals to work done by the stopping potentials to stop the electrons to come to the collector, to make the photoelectric current in the circuit zero. So which implies this E V naught is equals to h nu minus h nu naught. Or in the next step, which implies this stopping potential is equals to h over E into nu. I can write like that this equation, minus h over, or simply h nu naught over E, like that. Now here this h nu naught is nothing but work function, but h nu naught is the work function of the metal on which the radiations are falling. So instead of writing h nu naught, we can write this equation as V naught, that is stopping potential, is equals to h by E into nu minus phi naught by E, like that. Let this be equation number 1. Now, how he has checked the correctness of the relation? He compared this equation with the slope-intercept form by plotting the graph between the stopping potential and frequency of the incident radiation. So the graph was like as, along the y-axis, the stopping potential was taken. Why? Because he compares the above equation with the slope intercept form. So here he writes on comparing. Here we write on comparing the above equation with slope intercept form, that is y is equals to mx plus c. What we get? We get m is equals to h by e and c is equals to, we get m, that is slope, it must be equals to h by e, and c, it must be equals to minus phi naught by e. So when he plots this graph for a particular matter, the graph was found to be as, along the y-axis the stopping potential was taken, along the x-axis the frequency was taken. Why? Because here if we compare this equation, then along the y-axis the v naught, that is stopping potential, should be taken, and along the x-axis, as is quite evident that x represents, on comparing it represents nu, that is frequency, and here c is constant, so c is equals to minus phi naught by e. So the graph was found to be like as, in this way the graph was found. So when it intersects the frequency axis, it intersects at the frequency of the characteristic frequency of the metal, what we call threshold frequency. Now if we extrapolate, or if we extend this, then the intercept OD, it represents this minus phi naught by E. It represents this minus phi naught by E, and this intercept OA, is representing the threshold frequency. Now how he has verified or checked the correctness of this relation? He compares the slope of the graph with this h by e. So in order to find the slope, here we have considered the right angle triangle, that is ABC. Okay, so here we write from the graph, what we conclude, that slope of the graph, slope is given by, here I have written the right angle triangle ABC, so here I am writing this intercept as OE. Okay, so here slope is given by m, and m is equals to AB over this perpendicular over base, that is BC, in this way. Now but m is equals to h by e is there, but m is equals to h by e, so therefore h by e is equals to AB over BC. So what does it imply? It implies the value of Planck's constant must be equals to this AB over BC multiplied by E. That is while calculating this slope of this graph and multiplied by this E, that is charge of the electron, so we got the value of the Planck's constant, and this value found was very close in agreement with the actual value of the Planck's constant. So in this way he verified, or he checked the correctness of the relation, or we can also write it as, or h is equals to slope of graph multiplied by this E. So in this way we can write this equation towards further the intercept, this OD. This intercept OD is equals to minus phi naught by E. So here further intercept OD is equals to minus phi naught by E, which implies, in order to calculate the work function, magnitude of the work function of the metal is equals to OD multiplied by E. So in this way, the value is calculated for the work function of the metal by this formula, and the value calculated for the Planck's constant using this formula, they found to be in close agreement with the actual value. So in this way, instead of disproving the Einstein photoelectric equation, this scientist R.A. Millikan in the year of 1912, he has checked the correctness of the Einstein photoelectric equation. Now, let's study some competitive points here. That is the graphs. Various graphs are there based upon this verification of Einstein photoelectric equation. So here various graphs are like as various graphs. Based upon the laws of photoelectric emission as well as this. So here the first graph here we have studied, that is in between stopping potential versus frequency. So the graph we have found like as here it is intersecting. So this intercept is called as threshold frequency and this intercept is called as minus phi naught by E. O, D and this O, E. Okay. The similar graph, if we plot between this maximum kinetic energy and the frequency, this is the frequency and here kinetic energy maximum is there. So we got the similar graph for this case like as this is the threshold frequency, and if we extend it further, so the intercept this OD and this intercept OE represent the same thing. Why? Because in the experimental arrangement we have proved there in the observation that this maximum kinetic energy is equals to the stopping potential. So in this way these are the two types of graphs. The third graph is representing it is the graph between the current, that is photoelectric current versus time. This is the photoelectric current. So the graph is like as, that is as it is an instantaneous process, so this time is less than 10 power minus 9 seconds. It attains the saturation value. Apart from that, if we plot the graph between this photoelectric current versus frequency, this photoelectric current versus intense frequency, then what would be the shape of the graph? This is the photoelectric current versus frequency. So what we conclude, as long as the frequency is not exceeding the threshold frequency, this is the threshold frequency, the photoelectric current remains zero, and as it becomes threshold frequency, then the current at once becomes maximum. So in this way the graph is there, and the next graph is, that is stopping potential and intensity. If we plot the next graph between the stopping potential and the intensity of the incident radiation, here is intensity. So what would happen here? The stopping potential, as we know that it is independent of the intensity, so it will be constant. So in this way the various graphs are there which occasionally asked in the competitive exams. So in this way we have studied about this laws of photoelectric emission. Now let's move ahead. We people are going to study about the de Broglie axis and de Broglie wavelength. associated with the material particle. What about the de Broglie hypothesis? That is a 2 marks question CBSE asks sometimes. Let's study about this. De Broglie hypothesis, which led to the conclusion about the dual nature of radiation. Dual nature of radiation. Dual nature of radiation. How we can explain this, that radiation possesses the dual nature? It is based upon the de Broglie hypothesis. And what is de Broglie hypothesis? How we can explain? We will explain it in 2 lines, that is, whole energy according to de Broglie. Whole energy of this universe comprises of 2 things, that is matter and what we can say radiation, or we can say whole energy of this universe comprises of 2 things, that is matter and radiation. In the second point, nature loves symmetry. Nature loves symmetry. As the what we can say, as the what we can say, radiation possesses, nature loves symmetry, as the particles possesses the dual nature, so radiation must also possesses the dual nature, or simply the base possesses the dual nature, so radiation must possesses the nature. So here we can explain about this de Broglie hypothesis, that is, whole energy of this universe, whole energy of this universe comprises of 2 things, whole universe, or simply we can say whole universe is made up of 2 things, that is matter and radiation. 2 things, that is matter and radiation. Once again repeating, dual nature of radiation. As whole energy of this universe comprises of 2 things, that is matter and radiation. And the second thing, he stated that nature loves symmetry. Nature loves symmetry. Nature loves symmetry. Then what would happen? If the radiation possesses the dual nature, then matter should also possesses the dual nature. So we can say here, instead of dual nature of radiation, here we are studying, that is dual nature of matter. So here the first hypothesis, according to de Broglie, whole energy of this universe comprises of 2 things, that is matter and radiation. Now, as nature loves symmetry, so if radiation possesses the dual nature, so if radiation possesses the dual nature, possesses dual nature, then matter should also possess, dual nature. That is, sometimes it should behave like particle, sometimes it should behave like a radiation, base. So in this way we can explain about this de Broglie hypothesis. Once again repeating, here instead we were studying about dual nature of radiation, not like that, dual nature of matter. He states that whole energy of this universe comprises of 2 things, or it is made up, whole universe is made up of 2 things, that is matter and radiation. As nature loves symmetry, so if radiation possesses possess the dual nature, then matter should also possess the dual nature. Now, let's study about the de Broglie wavelength associated with the material particle. So here, in order to derive the expression for de Broglie wavelength, first of all, we people are going to derive the wavelength associated with the photon. De Broglie wavelength associated with photon. So here we people are considering this photon. First of all, we are considering the photon as a wave, and in the second step we people are going to consider it as particle. So if we consider the photon as wave, that is the quantum particle. So if we consider the photon, by considering the photon as a wave, the energy of the photon, if we consider the photon as a wave whose energy is given by E is equals to h nu. Okay, that is, if the photon is propagating like a wave whose energy is given by this, and further, if the photon is considered as particle, if we consider the photon as a particle, then what would happen? Energy will be equals to E is equals to mc square. Here, if we consider photon as wave, so here rather than we people will write that if the photon is propagating in the form of radiation, that automatically, if photon is propagating in the form of radiation, whose energy is given by E is equal to h nu, then therefore from equation 1 and 2, what we get, that is h nu is equals to mc square, but here nu is equals to c by lambda. So if we put here, what we get, hc by lambda is equals to mc square. So here c and c will get cancelled out. We get the required, that is lambda is equals to h over mc. So this is the required de Broglie wavelength associated with the photon. Now, for material particles, here I am writing the material particles, the de Broglie wavelength is given by, the formula will be lambda is equals to h over mv, because for material particle c will be equals to v. So putting this value, we got h is equals to lambda is equals to h over mv. So in this way, this was the de Broglie wavelength associated with the photon, and here it is associated with the material particles. So here some conclusions were drawn. What about this de Broglie wavelength associated for the photon? If we put the values here, then on substituting this point is from the computation point of view. So here de Broglie wavelength lambda for the photon, here I am writing or putting the value photon, it will come out to be value of this de Broglie wavelength for the photon, and then for material particle I am writing it for what we can say lambda for the electron, then deuteron, and then so their values we can learn and kept in mind while solving the numerical problems. So what about their values? So for photon its value, later on we will study about that, but here first of all we study a relation between de Broglie wavelength and the temperature. Okay, so later on I will tell you about this. Now de Broglie wavelength associate relation between, first of all we derive the relation between de Broglie wavelength and temperature What is the relation between this de Broglie wavelength and temperature? So here, as we know that lambda is equals to h over p, or simply lambda is equals to h over p is there. Okay, and let it be question number 1. Further, as we know that relation between this kinetic energy and the momentum, kinetic energy is given by p square by 2m, which implies p is equals to under root of 2mk. Okay, further let this be question number 2. Since according to kinetic theory of gases, the average kinetic energy is given by 3 by 2 kBT. Okay, so if I put the value of k here, then what we get? Then from equation 2, what we get? P is equals to under root of 2m into 3 by 2 kBT. 2 and 2 will get cancelled out. We get this 3m kBT. This is the momentum. So therefore, from equation 1, what we get? The wavelength, de Broglie wavelength, can also be written as h over root of 3m kBT, and this is the relation between the absolute temperature and what we say wavelength. Here we can write absolute temperature. Lambda is equals to h over root of 3m kBT. Now here this relation we have derived, that is de Broglie wavelength associated with the material particle, so it has some conclusions. What are the conclusions? Let's study about this. Conclusion number 1, we have derived the relation between this de Broglie wavelength and absolute temperature. Now, what are the rest of the conclusions? Let's study about this. Here, we have got the lambda is equals to h over mv. So, here we people are going to draw the conclusions. What are the conclusions drawn? The first one is, if V is equals to 0, then lambda will be equals to infinite. What does it mean? That de Broglie wavelength is only associated with the material particles which are in a motion. It is not associated with the particles which are at a rest, which implies de Broglie wavelength is associated with the material particles, which are in motion. It is not associated with the material particles which are in motion. It is not associated with the material particles which are at rest. The second thing, lambda is inversely proportional to m. What does it mean? Means de Broglie wavelength associated with the material particle whose mass is smaller will be greater, and the material particle whose mass is larger, their de Broglie wavelength is found to be small. So here we can say, which implies de Broglie wavelength associated with de Broglie wavelength associated with the body of lesser mass. De Broglie wavelength associated with the body of or with the particles of lesser mass will be greater, and vice versa. The third one is, as in the de Broglie wavelength associated with this material particle, there is no concept of charge. So what we can say, that de Broglie wavelength associated with the material particle is independent of charge. So here we can say de Broglie wavelength associated with the material particles is independent of their charge and nature. Okay. Further, the fourth point should be concluded here, that de Broglie wavelength is not associated with the electromagnetic wave, or simply we can say the de Broglie wavelength is not associated with the accelerating charge. Okay, so here we can say this de Broglie wavelength is not associated with the electromagnetic waves, not associated with the electromagnetic waves. That is, they are not associated with the accelerating charges. Or simply, here we can say, because in this way we can write, because EM waves are produced by the accelerating charges. So that's why in this way. This is the fourth conclusion drawn, and fifth conclusion is the drawback of this what we can say de Broglie wavelength associated with the material particle. That is, fifth conclusion is de Broglie wavelength associated with the material particle led to the confusion or led to the difficulty for what we can say, for locating the position of the particle, like electron. What should be the exact position of the electron? That was unable to find with this de Broglie wavelength. But we can say that the de Broglie wavelength led to the Heisenberg to introduce his principle of uncertainty in finding the position and momentum of the what we can say moving particle like electron. So here we can say de Broglie wavelength associated with moving particles led to the let Heisenberg to introduce his principle of uncertainty, uncertainty, that is product of uncertainty in the position and the uncertainty in the momentum should be greater than equals to, I am writing here, h cut over 2 pi, where h cut is h over 2 pi, or delta x into delta p, it must be greater than equals to h over 4 pi, because this h cut is nothing but h over 2 in this way. And here, according to this Heisenberg uncertainty principle, if we want to locate the position of the so here, this is the position of the electron, and if the wavelength associated by it is like that, so this is our electron. So according to Heisenberg uncertainty principle, what does it state? That product of uncertainty in position, this is what we call uncertainty in position of the particle, and this is uncertainty in momentum. So what does it mean? If delta x approaches to, if delta x becomes certain, then delta p, that is the uncertainty in the, what we can say, momentum, this becomes uncertain, and vice versa. That is, if we find the exact position of this material particle, then its uncertainty in the momentum will become infinite. So in this way, these were the conclusions drawn from the de Broglie wavelength associated with the material particle. Here, in this way, this was the most important, that is de Broglie wavelength associated with the moving particle led Heisenberg to introduce his principle, because the wave associated with the electron was like that, and there was no exact position of the electron by which the de Broglie can explain. So in order to locate the position, Heisenberg has given his uncertainty principle, and according to Heisenberg, the product of uncertainty in position and uncertainty in the momentum, it must be greater than equals to this h over 4 pi for the moving material particle. So in this way, these were the conclusions. Now let's study about the next derivation, that is de Broglie wavelength associated with the electron. So how we can derive this expression? Let's study about it. De Broglie wavelength associated with the electron. De Broglie wavelength associated with the electron, how we can explain it? So here, in order to derive the expression for this, let us consider an electron is accelerated through the potential difference of v volts. Then the kinetic energy of the electron will be equals to EV. Kinetic energy gained by the electron will be equal to the work done by that potential. So here we can write that as, let it be question number 1, but we have kinetic energy, that is kinetic energy 1 by 2 mv square is nothing but p square over 2m. In this way we can write. So here instead of this we will write p square by 2m. Therefore from equation 1 what we get, p square by 2m is equals to EV, or which implies this p is equals to square root of 2mev. Now as de Broglie wavelength is given by lambda is equals to what we can say, h over p. So we can write that is h over root of 2mev. In this way, this is the required expression for the de Broglie wavelength associated with this electron. Now if we put the values of respective constants, as h is equal to 6.63 into 10 power minus 34 joule second, m is the mass of the electron 9.1 into 10 power minus 31 kilogram, E is the charge of electron 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulomb, and V is the accelerating potential. So therefore lambda is equals to 6.63 into 10 power minus 34 divided by square root of 2 into m, 9.1 into 10 power minus 31 into E, 1.6 into 10 power minus 19 coulomb multiplied by V. So on calculating it we got the value 12.27 over square root of V angstrom. Mind that wavelength of the material particle will be in the form of angstrom. Now same for the competitive exams. If we calculate the de Broglie wavelength associated with the other material particles like proton, like deuteron, or like alpha particle, so its value will come so to be for the proton. For proton we have the value proton lambda p is equals to 0.286 over square root of V angstrom. Mind that every material particle will have the wavelength, de Broglie wavelength will be in the form of angstrom. For deuteron, lambda for the deuteron is given by 0.202 over root of V angstrom, and for alpha particle, that is what we call helium nucleus. For alpha particles, lambda alpha will be 0.101 over root V angstrom. So these are the de Broglie wavelengths associated for the different material particles when they are accelerated through the different accelerating potentials. So in this way we can write this. Once again I am repeating how this question may be asked carrying 2 marks in the annual exam. Write the expression for de Broglie wavelength associated with the electron. So here we have accelerated the electron through a potential V. So kinetic energy will be equals to E. So here since kinetic energy is equals to P square by 2m, that is energy is equals to P square by 2m, putting its value here, what we get, lambda is equals to H over P. So we got the required expression, that is lambda is equals to H over square root of 2mev. Further, on putting the respective constants, we get the value of de Broglie wavelength associated with the electron is 12.27 over root V angstrom, where V is the accelerating potential. and for proton its value will be 0.286 over square root of V angstrom. For deuteron its value will be 0.202 over square root of V angstrom. And for alpha particle, what we conclude, wavelength, de Broglie wavelength associated with the alpha particle is 0.101 over square root of V angstrom. What we conclude here, all the material particles are possessing the de Broglie wavelength of the order of 10 raised power minus 10 meter. So in this way, students, we have this was our today's lecture. So here we have studied about today failure of the wave theory, how the wave theory given by the Huygens was unable to explain about the laws of photoelectric emission. Then we studied about the particle nature of the radiation introduced by Einstein, their characteristics. After that, Einstein's photoelectric equation we have studied, and on the basis of that Einstein photoelectric equation we explained the laws of photoelectric emission. Then after that we studied about the de Broglie hypothesis that matter should have also the dual nature if the radiation are possessing the dual nature. Then de Broglie wavelength associated with the material particle, its conclusions. Then de Broglie wavelength associated with the electron and other material particle on the same formula base. And we studied about one of the important relation between the de Broglie wavelength and the absolute temperature. Thank you.